My name is Peter Hartman, and I'm the current chair of the MIT Enterprise Forum here in town. And for those who don't know about the MIT Enterprise Forum, we are one of 28 chapters in the world. And we've been here in the Central Coast since 1986, I think. We are basically a volunteer organization. It's open to everybody, but we are a volunteer organization. We have a board of about 32 people, and it's a very active board in all different areas of the community, not only the technology, but also in business in general. It's a mix of service providers, entrepreneurs, VCs, etc. And we try to mix things up and try to promote entrepreneurship in the community. That's really our mission, and we do this with these type of educational programs. We do 9 of them a year, and then we also try to network people in various from various backgrounds and professions and so on, and also try to inspire the community about entrepreneurship and technology in general. So I want to thank the board. They're putting in some long hours to put these programs together and support and so on. So I want to give them a hand. And I also want to thank a couple of folks especially. One is Ben Tucker, who is working tirelessly to put together these events, in terms of all the catering, the tables and setups and all that stuff. So thank you, Ben. I also want to thank Violet Cotto, who is handling the registration desk and taking care of all the things behind the scenes. She's doing a great job. And also Kyle Ashby, who is doing the marketing for us. So thank you so much, everybody. I also want to thank Steve, who is the moderator tonight. He put this program together, and I will do an introduction with Steve here, but he put in a lot of hours to put this program together, so great job, Steve. Sponsorship is very important, and we have some great sponsors, and we're really grateful for that, because without them, we wouldn't be able to exist. So thank you so much for that. We also have a new sponsor tonight. It's a company about product and market development. It's called SyncDev, and basically it's an organization that do a great job in trying to get market to products and work with some very distinguished companies around the country. And Frank Robinson is here tonight, and he have a little table and a few other things to talk about that. With that, I would like to introduce Steve. Steve Serabov is a partner at South Cal IP Law Group out of Westlake, and he's specializing in intellectual property law since 1991 and is an expert in strategic IP consulting and counseling. He works regularly with clients to develop and implement corporate IP programs to emphasize quality, economy, and risk management, and so on. His technical expertise includes many aspects of computers, both software and hardware, network, and so on, and electrical devices. Steve, he advises clients in multi-million-dollar, multinational, medium-sized company, private companies, so he's really a go-to guy, and his firm is really a go-to guy on the IP side. So Steve also have a BS degree in electrical engineering, together with his law degree, and he is a member of the California Bar and practice before the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So without further ado, Steve, come up here, and look forward to a great program. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you guys all for coming out tonight. So as I was putting together the program, one of the things that I was thinking about is not so much technology, but DNA. And one of the things you think about from a DNA standpoint is music is in our DNA. And I will guarantee you that at least one of you in this room tonight is sitting here with a song in your head that you cannot make it go away, right? And I bet there's somebody else in this room, and maybe even not one of the guys who was playing is doing something like this, or tapping their foot, and they're making a little music on their own. Music is in our DNA. It's part of what makes us human. And we were making music and listening to music long before there was any kind of technology. And the fact that we've got a lot of technology that's come up in the last 100 years, in the last 50 years, in the last 10 years, hasn't changed our desire as humans to make music and to enjoy listening to music. And what's really cool is today we can make music and listen to music in ways that were simply impossible even 3 or 4 years ago. Music today, it's better quality, we have more choices, and it's at lower cost than has probably ever existed. New technologies have added instruments and sources for listening to music. But what's interesting is as we add new instruments, and it's companies like Line 6 that bring us new music, new instruments, the old instruments don't go away. You know, gourds are still around as a means of making music. I would challenge anybody to identify any kind of musical instrument that's been ever developed that people still don't use some way or somehow. And by the same token, ways of listening to music haven't really gone away. You know, everybody thought that CD was going to kill the LP, and vinyl has seen a real resurgence in the last 5 years. There's a desire, it's this human desire to continue with these old forms of media. What we have tonight are 4 people, 4 entrepreneurs that are intimately involved in the business of technology that helps us to either make music or enjoy music. And the people that we have tonight, our keynote is Mike Wald. Mike is the Chief Business Development Officer of Oniricom. Mike has been involved with technology since playing on his first Apple in 1988. 1988. I think I was... Never mind. I was pretty old by then. Mike's educated as an ecological anthropologist. He brings both scientific and sociological insight to every project. He has worked with a broad spectrum of technologies and even broader list of media in his 10-plus years of web development. This multifaceted background allows him to make complex sites work beautifully. As the Chief Business Development Officer, Mike's current passion is creating effective solutions for communication and transparency in the entertainment industry. Oniricom is the premier consulting, development, and marketing agency for new media entertainment. The company works closely with their clients to expedite broad brand growth with proven strategic marketing tactics, leading-edge media campaigns, and custom technology solutions. They manage some of the world's most successful entertainment properties, including Jack Johnson, Matisyahu, and Disney Records. The company was founded in 2001, and it's a proven partner producing results for entertainment properties wanting to expand their audiences and strategically grow brand awareness. Oniricom is located here in Santa Barbara, and their staff is an agile team of top social media strategists and rich media developers. They know what it takes to cultivate your audience in the ever-changing entertainment business. So Mike, come on up and let's enjoy your presentation. Mike Wald.
Hey everybody, thank you for making it indoors on this amazing Santa Barbara evening. And I want to thank Steve for the great introduction, and I'm really excited to be here with the MIT Enterprise Forum. It's a really great honor, and I hope you guys can learn a little bit about what I'm going to talk about here, and you find it interesting. So thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Mike Wald, as Steve let you know, and I've been working with a company in town here in Oniricom for the past 6 years. And in a lot of different angles. I initially started working with them as a contractor as I was doing web development while I was in school, and then eventually work with them now, traveling all over the country and sometimes internationally as their business development officer. I work on creating partnerships with different brands, and including flash sales companies such as Luxyard and Fab. I work with Jack Johnson, Matisyahu, Warner Music, and we're starting to dip our toe in the water of healthcare and government business. So it's some really exciting things. And our company Oniricom really lives at that intersection of amazing content and leading edge technology. And we really strive to figure out how to bring them together so that we can get it out to you who are fans of that content and want to be engaged and are opting in for different services, be it through Facebook or Twitter. and you want to be aware of what's going on with these companies and get access to their product. And that's really what we focus on, is making things simple, clean, and putting really cool stuff online. And what I want to talk about today essentially is the modern web. Initially called Web 2.0, it was formerly known as that, it's been called Web 3.0. I feel like calling it the modern web makes it scale a lot better, and it stays consistent for the times. And a really big aspect of this especially lives within the music world, which is often at the forefront, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about how we also work in other aspects of entertainment, and kind of how we bridge those different gaps of the online and the physical world. So I hope you enjoy my clip art. The modern world is social, authentic, and agile. It's social because it's made up of your friends of friends, spurned lovers, pets, cities, countries, and business. It's now we're seeing business where when you go in for an interview at a company, they're often asking for your Facebook information to see who you're connected to and how you present yourself online. As an authentic system, it goes back to the old adage of to one's own self, be true. Or if you're good, you can fake it. And there's also what's known as the agile web. Initially a term within development, it's now sort of spread across the internet, and it really speaks the speed of change. And that people and industries and entrepreneurs out there can't really play the ostrich and keep their head in the sand now to really stay at the front of the pack. You have to be aware of what's going on and have a team that's set up to enable you access and opportunity. So the first thing in the social web, essentially, it's made up of three different aspects. The way that I've seen it is within creation, curation, and aggregation. I have a few different examples up on the screen here that talk about some different ways that within the music industry specifically, the content's created. A really great one right up the top there is Facebook. One of our biggest angles and one of the largest platforms that we work on. I'm sure you guys are very familiar with the different statistics that come out and all the companies they're acquiring. But for us, we're really focused on individual people on Facebook. We love using it as an amazing tool to get your message out, but also to go to individual fans who are giving you a way to directly connect with them and leverage their brand ambassadorship. And it's really amazing for any company in any field to be able to make those type of personal connections while the web keeps getting more and more faceless. One really great aspect is the ability now to flexibly create content. Content is king, and that hasn't changed. But what's so exciting now is that with the way technology has grown, that you can on your phone make a music video, shoot it during a concert, cut it, edit it, and post it on YouTube and get 1 million hits by morning. And that's so amazing now that there's this potential to get what you were previously keeping at home, sharing with your friends, and didn't deem yourself worthy to have the skill set to put really interesting content together. It's now being made very straightforward. We can see with the last purchase of Instagram, as a for instance, that content is very important to groups like Facebook especially, which was Instagram was posting 250,000 photos a day. It's all amateur content, but it's very exciting for these networks out there that are really trying to tap into that river of content that's coming online. The second aspect of the social web is curation. With all of that different type of content out there, YouTube videos, Spotify playlists, it's becoming overwhelming for a lot of people. I don't know how many of you are frustrated with Facebook because of how much content streams in at you. So what's happening is we're starting to see a lot more both amateur and professionals really taking to finding the best content. And this can be through sites like OpenSky, where you'll have people putting up their favorite cooking products as a celebrity, say Bobby Flay's favorite mortar and pestle, all the way to one of our clients, Modest Yahoo, creating his favorite Spotify playlist so that his fans can tap into what he's listening to while he's on the road and not just his content. Because it's really important to realize that we're only going to have more and more content coming online, and there's a really great business starting to come in around people that can take the best of that content and make it accessible. We saw a huge burst with this several years ago with the company Dig and Delicious, both doing this on what are called bookmarks, which I'm sure many of you have. But I don't know how many of you have ever thought to actually actively share those. And that's something that we really love doing at our company, is allowing for what we consider group memory. Essentially enabling the fact that I'm online and you're online and my business partners are all actively looking at interesting websites and interesting content, and we make sure to share that with our team. And there's some really great tools out there, and I'm happy to speak to anyone about those if they're curious and how they can implement for their company as well. And so the last sort of aspect in terms of managing content is known as aggregation. One of the very big tools for this is something called Google Reader, which I'm sure many people may be familiar with. And what that does is pull in the latest news from the web and enable you to tag it towards what you're looking for. What I often do with this is I love to keep track of my clients, and I will put out Google alerts so I can find out the minute my client's press release hits the air and I know that their tour date are available. And we also use this now deeper to actually get information on what people are tweeting and Facebook posting, so that I can actually find out what an individual person is talking about and how that turns from a single person's post at 7 p.m. one night into a trending topic the next day where you have 1 million follow-ups. And it's really exciting that you can actually follow how this progress of content moves across the web, and it's only going to be getting bigger. And there's something we've been really interested in with aggregation is the way we use it with our bands that we actively work with. So, for instance, I have a page up here for a local artist in town here, a 17-year-old named Scott James. Really great guitarist and just starting off in his career. And what we set up was a way for him to leverage all the different platforms that exist. This is an instance of a system called Bandpage that lives on Facebook. It's powering over 500,000 musician pages right now on Facebook, which is a very big number. And what's so exciting about it is that it lets you post your content into these other popular services, your videos on YouTube, your music through SoundCloud, your tour dates on a system like Bands in Town, and then pull it all into one place, really enabling you to work distributed on different platforms, enabling other people to say upload your photos from a show, but then pulling it all into one place. If you actually go to Scott's website, or a lot of the other websites we've put together for artists like Chris Cornell or Jack Johnson, we actually leverage these other services to show what they're doing elsewhere on the web and then automatically pull it into our websites. There's a lot of pluses to this in that you have a lot less overhead, which is really awesome. For those of us for anyone out there that develops websites or platforms, you know that dealing with content and making it very manageable and accessible is tough. So we leverage the fact that Facebook and other services, they're pros at it. But the real downside then starts to come into stability and managing expectations, and something always to be watched for when you're leveraging someone else's system is that it definitely can go down. And that's been a learning curve for us as we started initially managing all of our clients' content in-house, even running their servers out of a Texas office. And now we've gone to the point of using everything distributed across the cloud, as people like to say. So there is an authentic web that goes along with this content. And what this has to do with is being genuine and true to form. And this is especially important for artists and musicians and any media makers that are out there. There's a real difference in content that comes out from someone that is sharing of themselves versus things that feel very produced and cold. And your audience on the web knows about that. What I love is to look at the difference between, say, a pair of Facebook pages and profiles. And for those of you that don't know the difference, a Facebook page is, say, a business front. It's where you would post up as your marketing or your development company, your construction company. Whereas a profile is actually a personal page. This is often where you would have your own content that you share, such as your wife becoming pregnant or your son's 3rd birthday. What's very interesting now is Facebook's been changing their model, making the profile the hub of content sharing. And they've enabled this through a system they call Subscribe. And what's very exciting there is we're starting to see 5 and 6 times the magnitude of sharing and interaction going on with content that comes from their profile versus what comes from the pages. And the real belief about this is that when you see Britney Spears sharing her husband's shrimp jambalaya with her, you're that much more interested because you're getting in on her daily life, as opposed to when her management company posts her latest tour dates, you feel sold to. And we really try to work as a company to focus on what's authentic. And I said earlier that you can fake it, and it's true. You can definitely, I've been in many conferences where people have talked about authentic content and how the artist should post for themselves, when meanwhile I was posting for Lenny Kravitz on Twitter. And what we realized from that is that it just needs to be invisible. It doesn't have to be the real person posting, but you want everyone to feel like it is. And that's something very important and hard for a lot of businesses to do who are used to having a much more corporate and PR front. But what we're seeing now is that being open, being honest. A great example is recently Justin Bieber posted accidentally a wrong cell phone number for a contest. And so everyone was calling this other cell phone number. He went online, apologized for it. It became a huge trending topic in a story, and it ended up being good news for him instead of being the press debacle that they could have made it had he completely personally withdrawn and it had gone to lawyers. While the content itself should be authentic, what's really important is the different methodology and mediums for communication of said content. I have a couple examples up here. One of our artists, G-Love's Instagram post of the last time he went fishing, and then I also have the Britney Spears post that I mentioned with I believe a failed boiled shrimp recipe from her fiance. What's really great is that G-Love is an amazing artist who is really talented musically, but what he leverages is that people want to know about him. They find him as an interesting character, and he's enabled that. And what he's done for his fan base is he posts regularly. Every week he puts up a YouTube video, often shirtless, playing behind the stage at a festival, just doing a cover song or something his fans ask about. And using these different types of mediums, such as Instagram and Facebook in this case, leverages you different audiences. There are certain people that'll tune into Instagram, but they'll tune out on Facebook. So we really recommend to our clients keeping up with a platform that they're going to be able to keep up with and be regular on, but we love to see groups try out different software. There's so many opportunities to share, and we think it's only a great thing to try them out. And I understand with people with larger companies here where that's definitely not your own decision. But for those that are in smaller companies, I say experiment, dip your toe in the water and try these systems out and see what makes sense for the content you're trying to share and the people you're trying to reach. And there's really amazing tools for doing demographic analysis to see who you're hitting on these different services. And Facebook's are some of the most amazing with what are called insights. And these actually enable you to look at who's reading your post, who's talking about you, men, women, location, and even their likes, and which also then goes directly into you enabling advertising that goes directly towards those groups, which is a really important thing. I'm sure more people's ears are perking up for that. And what Facebook and some other services that we work with do is that they basically give you that really interesting information. But the only way that information comes in is from actually putting out content that they react to. When people don't do anything with a post, which we've had happen for large artists and small artists, you don't know anything other than nothing happened. Was the network down? Were people not interested? You don't know. But if you put up polarizing content, good or bad, you really see a return on that investment. Within that communication, what's really important is building that connection. And so for an artist or a personality or even or a business to connect, they need to know who they're speaking to and actually get out and reach them. With a musician such as Modest Yahoo in this picture, it's a lot easier to go do a vertical crowd surf as this is and walk along his audience. He'll often jump into the crowd at the show and let them move him around as he sings into the mic. It's a really exciting performance. And just that little bit of hand-holding, I mean, we often see it in politicians. I'm sure we're seeing it now. It goes a long way. People want to feel appreciated, and that single handshake, that ability for one person to be part of a conversation with you when they often think you're a faceless entity, there's a real benefit to gain from that. And I go back to talking about brand ambassadors. Now, these are your fans. These are people that are interested in what you're doing and want to share why it's exciting with their friends and family. And as the analytics show us from systems like Facebook and others, that when someone who's my friend on Facebook tells me to do something, I'm 6 times more likely to do it than when a faceless ad pops up to tell me. And those numbers lead into everything. It doesn't have to be directly from advertising, but it could just be Mike RSVP'd at a show, and now Jeff wants to go because he saw, hey, Mike's going to that show. It must be a good one. Mike knows good music. And with whatever outreach you're doing to your fan base or to your audience, it's really important to give them a way to reach back. Now, a lot of different groups and a lot of musicians that we work with often will have these web pages without really, maybe a blank contact form or some way to reach in. But what we've been pushing a lot of our clients to do is actually leverage these different alternatives for managing incoming email. Systems like Zendesk and Desk.com and other systems that are typically used by applications and software as a service websites, we're actually pushing to be used in the entertainment industry so that so that it's a manageable exchange and it enables the artist to actually log in on specific emails and reply directly to a fan, whatever the case may be. And some of our artists, such as guys like Jack Johnson, really don't do a lot of direct-to-fan conversation. He will meet with people at his festivals and at his shows, but he doesn't like to be on email. He'd rather be surfing or playing with his kids. But some of our artists, such as Modest Yahoo and G-Level, actually go on email and respond directly with their fans. They'll do that through Twitter, they'll do it through Facebook, and they'll do it through email that comes into the website. And you may think that a single email back and forth with a fan doesn't breed results, but we've had some amazing stories come from it. One was published by Bob Lefsetz, who's a fantastic commentator of an article that had happened a year ago. And it's really, we saw a really groundswell movement where people really loved the fact that one of our artists got in touch with a fan who was suffering from cancer and was able to talk to them on the phone and sang them a song because they couldn't show up at their hospital. And that's definitely a big outlier story, but what I think the message is that being in touch with your fan base and making that an active part of your regimen for marketing and PR is really important, and the dividends pay off tenfold. So one interesting aspect is that you're not always going to have the actual artists themselves or people actually directly engaging. So there's a lot of different pieces of software that are out there that make this feasible. And I'm showing a bunch of different examples up here, from an iPhone application to a Facebook ad, to a way to purchase content directly through Facebook, all the way to a festival setting. And I think that within this model of actually engaging with your fan base, you can leverage these different types of media and to great success. What we've found is that we love the numbers. We have a lot of great business guys at our team and our strategy teams that really love to focus on who is our demographic, and then really give them all that we can. So for artists that we work with that have a huge mobile following, say more than 10% of the hits on their website come from mobile, we need to get an app. We need to get an app out there because we're only going to enlarge that group. We do the same thing for fans where we see interaction on Facebook, and we do the same thing there. Now, this festival setting may seem out of place, but I really see that the digital and the real world are becoming so connected right now that you check in with Foursquare, you share a photo on Instagram, you communicate on Facebook about an event that you're at, and we're seeing that there's less and less, that the overlap, is becoming greater and greater, and there's less and less necessary distinction between actively being at an event and being at home watching it. And a really good example of this was the amazing group that were watching Coachella this past weekend, which just did its first weekend. They're going to be doing another one next week. They live streamed the entire festival on YouTube. And the number of people they hit at that festival is, it's in the 100,000, but the number of millions of people that were actually engaged on YouTube was incredible. And there was so much feedback going back and forth. And what they're doing right now is actually looking at the interesting data of people at the show who were talking to their friends who are watching it online, and looking at ways of actually using that data. Because I was at home watching a holographic projection of Tupac come back from the grave and perform. I don't know how many of you saw that, but I recommend it. It's really interesting. At least whether or not you're into the music, you can watch it on mute, but at least it's very interesting from a technical perspective. And I was talking to my friends who were watching it live, and they were sending me pictures live from the show as I watched the video. And for me, that was a really awesome experience because I felt like I was there and in time with it. And what's really interesting is that engagement strategies I feel like there hasn't been this huge shift from more traditional marketing to what we call creative campaigns or web-based engagement. It's just been a platform change. People still want certain things. They want to share with their friends, and they want to buy. They want to buy in. They want to become part of the story. And technology has just made it so much easier and more social. And that you don't have to wait to tell your friend around the water cooler the next day about something you did. Your Facebook told them the minute you bought it. What I was calling the agile web. And going into this initially, agile web, agile does development, to give you the history, sort of started with a lot of companies wanting to develop in these 2-week spurts of putting product online. And what's happened with it is that it's kind of extended out to more of the web culture. And you can see with my flexible guy up there that basically there's a real key to the agile web in being flexible enough to find the opportunities that are available, making use of the different types of access, and then really being able to focus on the results and the ROI. Anyone of any age can tap in to the web now. I remember tying modems together and figuring out ways to get more bandwidth on my AOL account, and having the phone company call us very upset because I was doing something apparently illegal, but my friends at school had told me how to do it, and it seemed really cool. And now we have 13-year-old programmers in India or here in the US who are able to present their products online, even find funding for them, and then connect to companies. And I posted just a few companies up here that we work with: SoundCloud, Bandpage, Involver, and Topspin. And these are all platforms. And what I mean by that is these are all systems that these are all companies that give you a toolkit to work with a means to an end. SoundCloud, for instance, lets you put your music online, build a community around it, let people comment, and then feed it anywhere on the web: mobile, Facebook, etc. We use them mostly for our websites, where we actually want to let our clients post to us to a community, but then share their content with the website. A great example is on our Chris Cornell site. So if you all have a chance and are interested, please take a look sometime. Bandpage, I mentioned earlier, is the most popular platform on Facebook. They have over 500,000 artists that are actually using it, and then connect to millions and millions of people from there. And what's amazing with groups like them, Involver, and Topspin is that groups like mine are able to figure out ways to work with them. And so what's really exciting for me working in business development is figuring out unique ways to leverage their platforms and APIs. An API essentially is a service layer that enables me to nerdily connect to what this service is doing and actually leverage their toolkit within my own mashup, say on my website or in my mobile application. And it's basically taking all the overhead out of me to support all these different tools that I used to have to, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and now I'm able to leverage another group that's already doing it and heads down doing it better. And so for me, it's really exciting to be able to go and meet with these different companies and say, how can I work with you today? Because it's different every day based on the new tools that they're coming out with and the new clients and opportunities that I bring in. And I say this also to companies that are here as it's an opportunity going the other way as well, that the more you make your platform accessible, the more people will work with it, and the more you can really have amazing development. And I still talk to a lot of companies that don't make their product accessible. They don't want to white label it, they don't want to license it, they want to keep it for what they're doing. And the way I look at it is you're cutting off a big market share. And I'm sure I'm being polarizing here, and some don't agree with me. But what I think is great is when a company doing anything, any kind of hardware or software or service industry, makes the sort of the fruits of their labor more accessible. And when you do that, you enable other people to tap into it without causing you work. And we've actually created several products that we use internally, and now we're sort of eating our own dog food and taking that model to heart and actually making our services more available. Because previously, people were tapping us for marketing plans and strategic development and building a one-off website. But we're really focused on actually how do we get 1 million people using something we've done? And we don't want to scale that big. We like being a small company. It's really nice to get everyone in one room for a meeting and take everyone out to lunch without breaking out a giant check. And so what we're doing is taking the same method that we love with our partners and doing it ourselves, and basically building out a platform that enables other groups to tie into us. And we're actually going to be launching one in the next month or so. So if you take a look at our website or sign up for our mailing list, you'll see what we're doing. It should be very exciting for anyone out there doing any kind of web development, as it's a very general platform, and it's going to be a big game changer, we feel. So with opportunity comes access. And the access is the way you can actually get to this content that we talked about earlier. How you actually get to it, how you share it, how you save it. And a lot of us do this on our smartphones, we do this on Facebook, we do this on our iPads, and it's becoming more and more ubiquitous. And what's really interesting with that is how the internet itself is becoming ubiquitous. It is getting put into everything. I talked to a batting cage proprietor who was setting up an internet connection so that his friends could his clients could post to Facebook how many balls they hit, what was their average pitch speed, what was the average strength of their shot. We're seeing the same thing in as a parallel also in golf at the driving ranges, and it's pretty amazing that we can use all these different tools that we have and get access to content. I talked to a guitar maker the other week who was setting it up to connect to the internet so you can record a song directly on the guitar and post it right to the web. And it was unheard of previously to really do anything like this, and now again it's becoming everywhere. It's becoming every day. And your refrigerator soon is going to tell you when you need milk. And that's really, we've been talking about it for a long time, and I think we're really starting to see this happening when the watches you buy let you know if they're internet enabled. So the kind of the big story that comes out of this is really the kind of results that you can gather from anything that you put online, from any campaign, any web project, any press release you send out. And there's a lot of different tools that have really been developed to help you with this, but they're still a little kludgy. They're still not really accessible for the average person. So groups like ours work with different clients to actually help them navigate and find out what ROI are they looking for, and then how are we going to capture it. And for those who don't know, ROI means return on investment. I'm sure anyone in here who does any kind of venture capital or banking or works in a startup knows exactly what I'm talking about. And it's really it's become such a hot term. And not that it wasn't prior, but now everybody's talking about it. Every Facebook post you put up has an ROI. Every email you send out to your fan base has numbers and metrics that come back that show you the success or failure and enable you to pick a path to move it forward. And what's amazing is how fast it's getting better. We're seeing companies pop up like Klout and others that actually track you as an individual's reach and voice on the web. They tap into your Facebook, they tap into your Twitter, they tap into your email, and they look at what you're doing and can say, oh, you're a 37. That means you hit this many people with this type of content and have this type of reach. And then there's the other side where there's people writing the big articles about it, like guys, Brian Solis and others, who are saying it's a bunch of BS. But what I'm excited about is knowing that, yes, it probably is a good touch of fluff and BS. But what's great about it is that we're starting to look in that direction, to not look at this amorphous internet, but really to be able to quantify these actions and make smart business decisions around them. And it's becoming a lot less arbitrary. We're seeing a lot of companies I would talk to and work with and help develop a strategy were often of this mindset of, this is what's going to be the best idea, let's put it out there. I don't want to A/B test, I know my customers. And we would often go along with that and not see the results they were hoping for. And largely this was because they weren't following standard business practice of getting an understanding of your positive and negative results, having a sense of what your forecast is going to look like, and actually really working towards that with a solid business plan for every type of strategy they put online. And now what's happening is there's so many tools out there that are trying to tell you if you're being successful or not. And I don't know if it's necessarily a better place that we're in, but I am excited by the fact that I can see actively what I'm doing on the web. When previously I didn't know, and I was sort of throwing something against the wall and hoping that it would stick. So really, we're at this point right now where we're seeing so much innovation occur, and it's coming so fast and furious. Every day there's new output. Every day there's a new phone, a new app, and something to keep up with. And I think part of my message, I guess, is that I think everyone should be tuned in, especially to things that hit them in their sector, because there's so much going on. As I mentioned, we're starting to work with healthcare companies who are going to lower their premiums for people based on checking into the gym or to a healthy restaurant. We're working in the fashion industry where instead of these flash sales that are all the rage and you need to know about it, it'll be open for 3 days, we're doing them over the course of an hour and a half and really doing a really cheap wholesale and selling thousands and thousands of pieces of merchandise over a real short period of time because we let people out there know about it and they're excited to try something new. And a big part of our offering now is really trying to mash up this amazing content in the music industry and entertainment that we work with and the more practical end. So, for instance, we're working with a food truck company down in LA. They won the next food truck race the other month. They're called the Lime Truck. Really great guys, young, they're 23, 24, got $100,000 and don't know what to do with it. And we're working with them to actually tie in with some bands that fit their demographic based on who's following them on Facebook of their 16,000 fans, and the overlap with artists that I work with or that management groups I work with are connected to, or even artists we want to reach out to. So we can get a band in to play on top of their food truck and hopefully sell more tacos for them. But we're not just, it is an interesting idea, it's neat, but we're actually using the numbers and the real practice business tools that we have available to us to make a real solid plan. And we have an idea of who we're gonna see show up, and that's what we're kind of gauging our results against. And like the quote says here, I don't know what the future holds, I just know I want to be there. And to me, really, we're at such an exciting point, and as I mentioned, I haven't been doing this business for too long. I've been doing this for under 10 years. I was initially practicing as an anthropologist. And anthropologists study the past in large part. And what's really interesting is growing with that, where being able to take what's going on in the current data and looking at how people are evolving with social networks and actually putting their culture out there, that every picture they put up, every post they make are adding to this culture that Facebook's putting together. And it isn't just fluff, it isn't just empty words, it's people actively engaging and emoting and really creating like very strong connections, be it through their World of Warcraft online account, or through a group phone that they're on through the internet, or through just an email list they're on sharing recipes. And I think what's great is that everything's so accessible, and that anyone here can come up with a great idea and tomorrow turn it into a $1 million application or a $1 billion application that Facebook will buy. And that's what just gets me up every single morning, knowing that I'm not doing the same old. I'm actually able to go and innovate and do something new every single morning. And being here in Santa Barbara to do that makes things all the better. That's all. Thank you guys so much. Short.
So our next speaker is John Mayer. John, you want to switch over? Great. John, in addition to being a great tech, is also the CEO of Blue Microphones. He joined the company in 2009, and he has led the company's recent market-defying growth. In fact, I hear that Blue Microphones is going to be listed in the upcoming issue of the Pacific Coast Business Times as one of the fastest-growing privately held companies in the region. John has been a leader in the music products industry for over 20 years. He doesn't look that old. Most recently as CEO of TC Group Americas, where he successfully merged TC's North American operations and doubled the size of the company by expanding into new markets. Prior to TC, John held leadership roles at Guitar Center Management and Elisa Studio Electronics. John holds a BS in Business Management. Blue Microphones was founded in 1995 with the belief that technical innovation and cutting-edge design can combine to create a family of audio tools that not only look inspiring, but sound like nothing else on the planet. And they really are amazing, beautiful products. Blue is the recipient of the Inc. 5,000 Fastest Growing Companies Award for 2 years running, and has continued its commitment to excellence and innovation in the realm of pro and consumer audio. The company's Studio Series mics contain a proprietary capsule that is hand-tested and approved to capture specific sonic signatures in specific ways. Blue Snowball is the world's first professional USB microphone. Blue's audio DNA led to a line of consumer audio products, and it's been extremely successful. And with that, I will turn it over to John Mayer.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. So Steve asked us to just do a quick kind of background on where we came from and how we got to where we are today, and then a little bit about the company that we're working for, or founded in some cases, and then a little bit about the future. So that's what I'm going to do. So a little bit about my background. I started as a musician, as Steve said. I was the guy tapping on the desk in school, and actually used to get kicked out into the hallway during tests because I bothered everybody else. So I had to take my tests in the hallway. And that's really where it all started, and that's why I'm still here today, is because I'm very passionate about the music side of it and passionate about making these tools for people to create music and then share the music in some of the ways that Mike just talked about. So the music kind of led me into the product side of it. So for me in my small town, that was working at the local drum shop. And from there, working at a local music store and getting into the technology. At that time was the first Apple Mac. MIDI was just invented. And I was the only guy that was playing with that stuff and getting a feel for it. So really, from a very early age, I was amazingly intrigued at how these products appear. How do these guys come up with these ideas for a product, develop the product, get it manufactured, market it and talk about it, and then push it out into the world. And that process just completely intrigued me. So I knew that the first day that I worked in a music store that's what I wanted to do, even though I still love the music and still play all the time. So I sort of see myself as the busboy who worked his way up through and eventually ran the restaurant. So I spent a lot of time in retail, a lot of time as a sales representative, with my dream always to go to the manufacturing side. And that's where I switched about the late 90s, switched over to the manufacturing side and started to get into the sales and marketing of the products, and then eventually moved into some of the product development side as well, and how to talk about those products. So that's the background. Spent a little bit of time in mass retail at Guitar Center, so I had some interesting perspectives when I got into my role at TC and now at Blue about how that whole process works and how to make sure that our products are getting through the channel correctly and being communicated to our customers. So that's the quick and dirty background, and I had to get one visual. Let's see if the clicker works. There's where I began, an 80s cover band. So I thought you would enjoy that. Dug that out of the archives and did a little scanning last night. So let me talk a little bit about Blue. Steve gave you a pretty good overview, so I won't spend a lot of time on the background. But essentially, the company was started in the mid-'90s by a couple of very passionate guys who cared a lot about sound. One of them, Skipper Weiss, was a successful pop smooth jazz artist, and Martin Salsbrun's a successful acoustician from Latvia, of all places. And they were buying mics, refurbishing mics, really getting into it, and one day decided we could build our own mic. We know so much about this, and that's really where the whole thing started. And while we've been diving into the consumer space over the last 5 or 6 years, we're very cognizant of where we came from, and it's all about the sound and the audio capture first, and then we get to have some fun with it. And as Steve said, they brought an element of design and color and fun naming and just fun in general to the company. So we get to delight customers. They walk into an Apple store, see a funky product called Yeti with a really fun box where the technology's kind of pushed in the background and it's more about how you're going to use the product. And they say, I got to have that. That matches my Mac perfectly and I need a mic anyway. And then they plug it in at home and go, oh my gosh, this sounds so much better than what I've been experiencing. So we get to kind of have fun with it, but also deliver a really great product. Basically, we do recording mics, we do live mics. Now we've moved into mobile, and you can stop there, Steve. And about 5 or 6 years ago, Apple, actually before that, Apple started putting GarageBand on every Mac. So really, that's kind of started the whole idea that this was power to the people. This was not you had to go buy a really expensive interface and a bunch of expensive products and really expensive software. You could buy a Mac, and for the price of the Mac, you've got a really great recording piece of software. The problem was there wasn't a lot of great, easy-to-use quality ways to get into the box. And So we came out with a product called Snowball, which you can sort of see there. It's a small picture. And it just really took off. A USB mic, $99, fun design, little retro modern, and it sounds great, super easy to use, plug and play. And really, for being a pro company, we put this in the Apple Store, and it just went crazy, and it immediately opened the company's eyes to, okay, there's something else here. There's a whole nother market we're not addressing. So we spent a lot of time over the last, since my time coming to the company, really capitalizing on that, finding new fun ways to address this market and give these customers ways to interact with their music and get their music captured and then share it across all kinds of different platforms. So that was a turning point for the company, and now actually the majority of our business is done in the consumer electronics space, even though we're still very dedicated to the pro side. And then a little bit about kind of where we're at now. We've worked the gamut with artists. In fact, have some of the artists of Mike's company use our products. We've got a nice crossover now of pro products where we've got a $10,000 microphone that Bono's singing to in the studio, but he's got a Mikey in the tour bus that he's recording on his iPhone his latest song ideas. So we have a nice crossover between the pro artist and the actual consumer using and consuming the product. This slideshow was designed for a clicker, so I apologize, Steve, to make you get up and down. But so the result is you can kind of see what's happening for our business. I'm happy to say that in this really funky economy over the last few years, even our pro business has grown. But you can see by this chart that the consumer business has really taken off for us, and it's really changed the complexion of the company. And we're lucky, talk about authenticity. We've really spent a lot of time through social media and letting people be a part of us. We put some mics in the parking lot, and we have the FedEx truck run over them, and he didn't know we put them under there, and it was a big joke, and we post the video, and everybody loves it, and they feel like they're part of us. They're actually in the parking lot with us hanging out. And so we've really been able to sort of take the small little pro boutique company and blow that up a little bit on social media. And as Steve said, we've the end result is we've been growing like crazy, which has been great. So on to the future. So where we see things going from our perspective, at least, is very mobile, right? So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this was all about recording in a recording studio. Maybe you had a setup at home, but likely when your band got to that point, you went to the studio. Very expensive mics and a lot of gear and $100 an hour. Things have gotten so high quality and so inexpensive and so easy to use. And Marcus, I know, is going to talk about some stuff that Line 6 is doing on this front. So we're really looking at making products that allow for really high quality capture, but quick access, getting it into an iPad, getting it into an iPhone, sharing it immediately with an app, being able to control that a little bit. So the first product I'm going to talk about on that front is Mikey. This is a product that plugs into an iPhone, and it's essentially a stereo professional recording microphone. In fact, if you click the next slide, there's audio. I don't know how loud it's going to be, but this is recorded raw. In fact, one of the founders of the company, Skipper, playing guitar into an iPhone with a Mikey with nothing else going on. So you could do that with a microphone on the iPhone, and it wouldn't clip. In other words, it wouldn't distort and be overdriven, but it wouldn't have sounded like that. So if you can click the next slide. Mikey is a product that's $99. It works for any iOS product, so iPhone, iPad, iPod, and it's something that we're going to be shipping this year. And very excited about it. We've actually had several generations of this. This is the latest generation. So the Spark is an interesting product for us, and this is all about the iPad. And I don't know if you guys have followed this, but the iPad was all about content consumption when it first came out, which I don't think was Apple's intention. They made a major push over the last year to make it be a creation product, because that's where the Mac got its foothold. And you're seeing not only GarageBand, but iPhoto, and they're getting other folks like Adobe and creating all kinds of amazing products for drawing and creating music and creating artwork and touching up photographs. And we thought, well, if we're going to do a product for iPad, we're going to take a pro recording product. I mean, an iPad and a GarageBand piece of software is an amazing tool. We're going to bring an amazing professional recording tool and port it over. And that's what we did with Spark. And again, the idea is to have it be relatively portable and mobile, and you can put the thing in a bag and carry it with you, but you're getting essentially recording studio quality on the go. And then lastly, and I have one of these with me, it's going to be hard for you guys to see. Marcus is going to be my Vanna White. But this is something new for us. And again, it goes to this idea of things getting smaller, getting more mobile, and being about sharing and about getting across the internet. This is a product that basically is like 2 ears and a brain. There's 2 capsules inside it, and facing in opposite directions, and a bunch of DSP, so digital signal processing inside the device. And we're doing all kinds of interesting things like noise cancellation, processing, and sort of tuning it to be a voice product. And the idea is to be a brainless way to communicate using your computer. So Skype right now, I don't know if you guys know the statistics, but Skype with 800 million users is the largest voice carrier in the world at this point. And I use it all the time for work. We do conference calls. We do all kinds of things. What this device will do is, if you're the guy taking notes and tapping at your keyboard, it knows that that's not voice, and it basically minimizes. In fact, it can go all the way to muting. And then when you speak, it kicks back in and hears your voice. And because we're Blue, there's actually a mode in it where you can click a button and it goes into music mode and you can play guitar, and it gets rid of all that voice stuff if you wanted to. So that's kind of our vision of where things are going and the products we're creating for it. And that's all I have prepared. I hope I didn't go over my allotted time. Thank you. And
Thanks, John. So next up is Marcus Ryle. Marcus is co-founder and senior vice president of new business development at Line 6. He's responsible for Line 6 products and technologies in emerging markets, which currently include digital wireless microphones, and mobile products. Prior to Line 6, Marcus co-founded Fast Forward Designs in 1985, which eventually became Line 6 in 1996. From 1980 to 1985, he worked at Oberheim Electronics as a senior designer responsible for developing many of the company's successful synthesizers. I had one of those. Cool products. Mr. Ryle's long history and expertise in technology and product development have resulted in the co-invention of 17 U.S. patents. I love that part. He is a member of the Audio Engineering Society and has served on many industry standards and advisory committees. A classically trained pianist, Mr. Ryle has been involved in playing keyboards and are creating sounds for several motion picture and television soundtracks, as well as numerous professional recording artists, including Barbra Streisand, Olivia Newton-John, Christopher Cross, Chicago, Shaka Khan, and Lee Ritenour. Line 6, funny, see, I only hear you play rock and roll. Line 6 is a music gear manufacturer dedicated to integrating technology with music products to inspire creativity both on the stage and in the studio. Headquartered in Agoura Hills, Line 6 currently has a presence in over 60 countries worldwide, with offices in California and the United Kingdom. In just under 7 years, Line 6 has grown from an original team of 10 to over 230 employees. As the pioneer of digital modeling guitar amplifiers, Line 6 has created award-winning products for guitarists, bass players, and engineers working both on stage and in the studio. And now, my friend Marcus Ryle.
Thank you very much. Well, you'll sense a theme here. We're going to try to tell you a little bit about the company and my background. I think we're going back in time with each presenter. As we get older, you heard all those 80s artists that were mentioned, and I started playing music at a very early age, and much like the other gentleman here, music's a huge part of my life, and led to this particular career. So to start with, to give you a sense of what Line 6 is about, I thought I'd just start with our mission statement, which really does describe what we're wired to do, which is to deliver transformational products that inspire musicians and sound professionals to ignite their creativity and passion for music. You know, as Steve was saying, making music really is part of our DNA. It's an innate human activity that, it transcends language and economic barriers and countries. And it's something that doesn't have any age boundaries or even proficiency boundaries. You know, you can make music if it's something you aspire to do, and it's just a great way to communicate, to be heard. And it's actually, in polls, it's one of the highest aspirations that people who don't play music have, is to be able to play a musical instrument. It's an innately human thing that we all get to enjoy. And whether you're, on a world tour or in a recording studio or just playing in a garage or just learning your first instrument, the language of music is the same. Now, making music, for hundreds of years, the primary barrier that existed is the mastery of an instrument. If you practice your guitar, practice your piano, whatever, you're done. You can now make music to whatever level of proficiency you choose to do. But with the advent of technology, it opened up a lot of possibilities for musicians, but it also created a number of new barriers. So now, not only did you need to master your instrument, you needed to master audio engineering, understand mixing and sound design and software and all these other tools, which created huge possibilities, but don't actually have anything to do with making music. It's a decidedly left brain activity to try to work with all this gear, where music is a creative experience. It's a right brain activity. And fundamentally, the types of transformational products we're about is trying to harness technology to remove these technology barriers. So now a guitar player can have a single device they plug their guitar into and get the sounds of hundreds of different pieces of equipment. Or a keyboard player with a single controller and some powerful software can get the capabilities that used to require a warehouse full of gear. So that's a little bit about what we do. I'm going to talk more about the products, but now I got to go back in time to explain a little bit about me and why I'm doing this. As I said, I started playing music at a very early age. I studied classical piano and was just always very interested in technology. I got my first synthesizer when I was 12 years old and got very inspired to learn technology because as a tinkerer, I started opening things up. And as soon as you break something you've saved all your money to pay, you're highly inspired to figure out how it works so you can fix it. So playing with synthesizers, playing in bands was really all I wanted to do, which also meant I didn't really want to go to school. I did leave high school when I turned 16. But as it so happens, I found a local school, Cal State University Dominguez Hills, that I started going to when I was 16. On one hand, to take some classes, the kind of thing you're supposed to do in college. I took some physics and analog and digital electronics and software, which are all things I was interested in. But I was mainly interested in some of the gear they had. Some of this was here. They had just put together a recording studio. They had a 16-track, 2-inch machine. And they actually had 2 panels of these EMU modulars. This now starts to date me a little bit, but this was state-of-the-art toys for a music technologist. And while I was there, I was able to help them actually acquire what was the latest of technology at the time, one of the first digital synthesizers back in 1979. This was a digital synthesizer. And it just so happens that this being one of the only ones in Southern California, it caught the interest of a Southern California synthesizer pioneer named Tom Oberheim, who came down to check it out. And at that time, although I was younger than most of the students, I was now teaching some classes because I was one of the few who was able to figure out how these crazy newfangled inventions work. And so I gave Tom a demo, and he offered me a job at Oberheim Electronics. So at 19, I went to work for one of the few synthesizer companies around down in Santa Monica. And that was really where I think I got my real education. I spent 5 years at Oberheim. These were some of the products that I got to help design: drum machines and sequencers and synthesizers. For those technical folks, these were digitally controlled analog synthesizers. This is still back in the early 80s, so the sound generation was analog, but you could put it under microprocessor control and now create a lot of capabilities like being able to instantly recall any sound you want. By 1985, I had a real interest in doing a greater range of technology. So along with another engineer, I dug out some archive photos too. That's me attempting some sort of prototype. And Michel Doidic, who was an engineer at Oberheim, along with my wife, Susan Wolf, we started a company called Fast Forward Designs. And our basic goal was to be able to continue to explore music technology, just this innate interest in creating enabling technology for musicians, but to do it on a broader scale than just the types of things we were doing at Oberheim. And as consultants, it gave us the opportunity to work with a lot of different companies. There was a European company called Dynacord. We designed some digital drum products and keyboards. Alesis was another customer. We're going to go quickly through the timeline here. We did about 40 products for Alesis: drum machines and sequencers and digital effects processors, a series of digital multi-track tape recorders that kind of triggered the home recording revolution. Now you could get the quality of a professional studio right in your bedroom. More keyboards. I did mention I'm a keyboard player. It's kind of weird that we do a bunch of guitar products, but yeah, keyboards is my start. A few other companies that we did some work for are listed here. DigiDesign, we did some sound cards and things like that. So that was really our main focus for about 10 years. And that was also a great education. And when you're working as a consultant, well, a few advantages. First of all, we'd been working at Oberheim for 5 years, and we saw how a small entrepreneurial company struggles with things like managing inventory and cash flow and those things that musical folks aren't typically trained in, and that it's a company that struggled a bit. So as consultants, we didn't have to deal with any of that. We just got to have the fun. We designed the products, let someone else deal with building it and selling it. And our business model was we got a royalty stream on these products. Some of these products that I've shown here actually generated over $500 million of revenue for the companies that we did consulting for. That was not our royalty, I want to be clear. We didn't get the $500 million. They did. But we got a piece of that, enough of that to, after 10 years of working for the companies and seeing what we liked and didn't like about how they were run, decided we were ready now to undertake the bigger step of making our own products. And that started out, that is what is now known as Line 6. Line 6 is actually the same company as Fast Forward Designs. Line 6 actually started out as a brand of, essentially we became our own client as consultants. And what we saw was, we believed a real opportunity as musicians. Now we were, as Steve said, about 10 engineers, all musicians. The evolution through the 80s enabled keyboard players and record producers and recording studios to have tremendous capabilities, right? I could push one button, get any sound I wanted. You could do miraculous things in the studio. Now, recording on computers was coming around and plugins. And then there was the guitar player. The guitar player still, if they wanted to have a great range of sound, had to have a truckload of different amps because each one sounds different. They had a ton of effects and pedals, a ton of different instruments. And without any disrespect to all of that incredible gear, the logistics and the cost involved, if you really wanted to have a wide palette of sounds, was really quite daunting for a lot of people. And at that time, in the early to mid-90s, we thought maybe there was enough DSP power that we could actually create software models of these circuits, a lot of them being vacuum tube based, and still, I believe every amp you see up there is vacuum tube based. because there's a sound that is unique, and it's not just nostalgia, and it's not just religion. There's a real reason why guitar players prefer to use these types of products, because of the sound and the feel, right? But it comes with some baggage too. And we thought if we could create those sounds in software, then we could give guitar players the kind of freedom that other music folks have had, like keyboard players. So in '96, we introduced the world's first digital modeling guitar amp and the first patent for Line 6. Finally there was a collection of amplifiers and effects that could all be in one device. That was our tiny little booth at our first trade show, Hall E for those NAMM folks. And not long after we put that software, since it is software, in a plug-in form. So now in a computer, you could actually change what guitar amp you played after you played it, by reprocessing your guitar sound. So that was the beginnings of Line 6. Just a brief second on modeling. Thanks. This is kind of a visual representation of the kinds of products that we own and love and study in great detail, so that the sounds of these instruments and effects and amps can today now be realized with a single guitar and effects pedal and a single amp. That includes modeling of the guitar instrument itself, and I have a little demo that I'll show you, give you a little more detail of that in a second. So from those humble beginnings, we've been very fortunate to have had this technology accepted. It's really a technology transition, not unlike film cameras becoming digital cameras. And in fact, it started in a very similar way. Remember the early days, digital cameras was its own category. These digital cameras, they had these great advantages. They didn't really look as good as film cameras, but it was interesting technology, this fringe thing. Today, there really aren't digital cameras. Today, there are cameras. They just happen to all be digital, right? That's how these kind of transitions happen, because the quality evolves, the technology evolves to where the benefits so outweigh any of the limitations the early ones had. And I can say today, when I listened to our first guitar amp, it was the best we could do at the time. We thought it sounded great then, but how the technology has evolved now, just like going from pixel counts in the Ks to the megs, the quality now is really leaps and bounds above where that all started. Speaking of where we started, our office is in Calabasas, just down the road. We do now have actually over 280 employees in 6 different locations. Cute little animation there. We are venture-backed. After the success of our first amp, we did raise some venture capital, and we have some great and active venture partners in our company, Sutter Hill and Redpoint. And we now have millions of customers, and our products are sold in over 70 countries. Now, as we said, music's part of our DNA. That's a key part of the culture of the company as well. These are just some photos of some of the venues in our offices and some of the music events that happen. We regularly have jam sessions and various musical parties. I mean, it's the whole reason that we got into this business in the first place. We have a real passion for music and making music, and we get the benefit of being able to play with our own equipment. And fortunately, we're not the only ones who play with our equipment. We're very fortunate to have a number of artists that use our products on the road, as well as in the studios. And our product line has expanded beyond guitars. We've just introduced a pretty radical shift in how technology can solve problems for live sound using digital technology. Our guitars and amps, of course, various effects with digital wireless microphones and wireless guitar interfaces, computer audio products, and also mobile computing that John mentioned. This is, we totally agree, this is kind of the next frontier in which technology is removing barriers. We've introduced a number of products, and now, John, if you want to play Vanna, you can hold up, they're sitting there right in front of Mike. This is this little box, it's called the Mobile In, is a guitar interface for your iPhone or your iPad. And we've actually taken the processing power now available in an iPhone or an iPad. It now makes it possible for us to put our modeling technology right into an app. So you can plug that interface in your phone, plug in your guitar, plug in some headphones, and have this huge collection of amplifiers and effects all available for you anywhere you want to play in the world. We've also introduced some keyboards, back to that keyboard thing, and I've got one over there if you guys want to look at it later. Where again, these are the only keyboards that are actually designed to be such low power that they're powered directly from the iOS device. So you can, again, have your headphones and your keyboard. I think I have a picture of a guy happily making music. Now, you don't even have to be connected to a wall socket anymore. And with the power of apps like GarageBand and a whole bunch of software synths that are available, it's really tremendous what you can do. So I'm just about wrapping up. Hopefully I haven't used too much time. I've got a little video demo of what you can do taking our Variax digital guitar, which has over 25 instruments in one. If you listen closely, you'll be able to hear this guitar player and see him change from different electrics to acoustics to 12 strings and different tunings and so on. Just plugged right into this mobile in, right into an iPad running GarageBand. And everything you hear will have just come right out of an iPad. And he plugs a keyboard in at the end too. Thank you very much. So yeah, it's pretty amazing where things have come from those pieces of gear way back at Dominguez Hills, and now with an iPad, a guitar, and a little interface, some headphones, you can pretty much express anything you want musically. So that's a little bit about what Line 6 is about. Turn things back over to Steve. Thank you very much.
So you guys probably aren't looking at your watches, because every time I look around the room, everybody seems really engaged. As the guy who's in charge of keeping time, I'm going nuts right now. It's the damn musicians. Every time, all they want to do is get up and play. So I'm going to apologize. We're going to run a little bit late tonight, because I want to ensure that Seymour has enough time to talk. 10 minutes, right? Right?
I can do it in 3 minutes.
His entire life in 3 minutes.
I'm older,
I want to be
though.
sure to have enough time for you guys to have plenty of Q&A, because I don't know about you guys, but I've got a lot of questions I'd love to ask them. I want to make sure all of you guys have enough time. And if we run a few minutes over to ensure that everybody has time for Q&A, I hope you don't mind. So let me talk about Seymour for a minute, and I'll keep it brief because I'm not getting paid by the hour right now. Seymour was born in New Jersey. We won't hold that against him. He grew up in the 50s and the 60s, but he doesn't look it. During a time when electric guitar music grew into greater acceptance and expectations too, Seymour began playing clubs, and during one show, his Fender Telecaster? Okay, thank you. His Telecaster's lead pickup broke. And for those of you who play guitar, I don't, but that's a big deal. It forced him to play the rest of the night on the rhythm pickup. I'm an electrical engineer, so I do understand how this stuff works. I'm just not enough of a musician to know. He later rewound the lead pickup, and this led to his interest in the dynamics and character differences of pickups. And mind you, back in those days, pickups were whatever came with the guitar. If you needed a replacement, you would beg the people that made the guitar to send you a new one, and that was kind of it. And they didn't really give much of a crap about the quality of their pickups. It just was whatever it was. Seymour's career led to a focus on the design and manufacture of pickups. And the pickup is the element in a guitar. You know, when you play an acoustic guitar, the strings vibrate and make sound. When you have an electric guitar, you've got to have some way of converting what we call that mechanical or acoustic energy into electrical signals, and that's what the pickup does. And this is what Seymour really focused on. He's done repairs and rewinds of pickups for such artists as Jimmy Page, George Harrison, Eric Clapton, David Gilmour, Pete Townsend, Jimi Hendrix, Peter Frampton, and Seymour's guitar hero, Jeff Beck. After 30 years, the Seymour Duncan Company manufactures much more than just electric guitar pickups. The finest in bass pickups under the brand name Basslines were next. Then Seymour's authentic replications of pickups from the 50s and 60s, aptly renamed Antiquity and Antiquity II. Then Benedetto Jazz guitar pickups, and finally the union of Seymour Duncan and Rick Turner to form DTAR, Duncan Turner Acoustic Research. And now I bring you Seymour Duncan.
Great, thank you. Okay, I can do this in 5 minutes, guys. Anyway, like everybody was saying, I grew up in South New Jersey, and it was farmland, you know, and I was an only child, for one thing. And one day my uncle, who played for the Paul Whiteman's orchestra, he was a trumpet player, and he says, you know, I have a guitar in the attic. And I said, you do? And it was an old Silvertone acoustic guitar. So they brought it to me, and my Uncle Howard Duncan, my dad's brother, said, here, I'm going to show you a chord. So he showed me that Cowboy D chord, you know. And that was the first chord, and I played that chord every day for 2 weeks. And then when I went back to see him again, he showed me the A chord. So I learned how to play the A chord. So that really sparked an interest. You know, I was 12 years old, and the funny thing is it was getting near Christmas time, and I had the Sears. How many people here remember the Sears catalog, the real thick one? Oh, I'm glad a few people are my age here, you know, or understand it, you know. But I would mark this one page, and this guitar, it was a Sears, it was, I think, 1452 model. And it was semi-hollow, and it had gold spark on it. It looked just like Les Paul's guitar, you know. And so I marked it, and here it is, Christmas time, and I see this box in the corner. I said, no, I can't. I'm excited to open this box. So I get to it, and then I have to open up the neckties and the T-shirts from Aunt Marion and Uncle Howard and everything, you know. So they finally let me open it, and I tear the paper off this box, and I was in shock. They bought me an accordion, you know. I mean, I was devastated. I mean, I was really devastated, you know. You guys feel for me, right? Oh, man. It's because I used to watch the Lawrence Welk Show, and it was Buddy Merrill, Neil Levang that I would watch. You know, I was trying to see what they were doing on the guitar, you know. And I would watch everything. I'd sit there with a piece of paper and a pencil, and write down like what his fingering was on the chord. I would make these chord charts and trying to see if I could remember what chord he played, you know. And so somehow my neighbor, who owned a drugstore, heard that I was watching a Lawrence Welk show every Wednesday night, you know. So they figured that it must be because he wants to play an accordion like Lawrence Welk, you know. So that ended quickly, you know. So they got me lessons, and I couldn't even hold this thing. I mean, I'm 12 years old, and the accordion, it was so big, you know. So finally, the next year, my uncle Bid Furness and my Uncle Howard finally convinced my dad to get that I wanted a guitar, you know. And then once I got the guitar, I would take it to school with me. I would everywhere I would go, I would take this guitar. I would go into the bathroom in school, and it was just the echo in there was so neat, you know. And I always, that's why I always use reverb. I just love the sound of reverb or an echo on a guitar, you know. And my Uncle Howard, he says, here's 2 records for you. And these are 2, probably the greatest guitar players you'll ever hear. And it was an EP of Chet Atkins, and the other one was an EP of Jimmy Bryant and Speedy West. And to this day, I can't play like either one of them, but I mean, I appreciate their music so much, you know. So again, I was playing in Atlantic City, and a local TV personality by the name of Sally Starr borrowed my guitar, and I was using A-tenor banjo strings, if anybody understands what that is. I grew up knowing a guy named Roy Buchanan, and my uncle finally took me to Steel Pier in Atlantic City, and he says, I want you to hear this guy, and I hear, down, 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 and the curtains open up, and it was Les Paul and Mary Ford. So here I am, 13 years old, watching Les Paul, and after the show, they called me backstage. They said, we have a young guitar player here that I want to talk to, you know. So my uncle Bid Furness took me backstage, and I met Les, and that's where he showed me about his thing on his guitar called the pulverizer, and it was an apparatus where he could play a rhythm part, hit a button, and turn a switch, and it would rewind the tape that was in the back of the studio. So that very much got me interested in this electronics, you know. So I went back and I said, Mr. Paul, what's that thing under your guitar strings there? And he said, that's a pickup, Sonny. He always called me Sonny. And so that was the start of it. And boy, I started thinking about sounds and how I could do it. And he told me about how he used to have a record player, and he would take the needle off of it and put it on the wood of his guitar. And he could get a sound coming out of his record player, you know. I thought that was fantastic. So I go home, and over the weekend I took my mom's record player apart. It was a kind that had the TV, record player, phonograph, and just everything, you know, the radio. And so I pulled it out. I finally got it out, and it had all these wires coming out. And but I actually got a sound of it, and I put it on this. I made a board, and I put 3 strings on it, and that was my first building of an electric guitar, you know, which was really kind of neat, you know. Then Les told me about magnets, you know, and how you wrap magnet wire, which is a fine copper wire, which is insulated around the coil, you know, around the bobbin or magnets, and when you pluck the string, it generates an alternating current. And I was fascinated by it. Like everybody here, all of us had some fascination with how things worked, you know. And so I would go to school, and I would see an old TV set, and I'd run back home, get my wagon, put the TV set in it, take it home so I could take all the electronic parts out of it, the switches, on-off switch with the volume control and everything. And so when I was 13, I made my first electric sort of slide guitar, I guess I would call it. I always loved Santa and Johnny. To me, they did Sleepwalk, if you guys remember that old song. So my first electric guitar became like a slide guitar, which was kind of cool. So anyway, I started doing that, and I started playing more, and then I was very lucky to, I was playing, when I was 16, I had to have an ABC liquor license to play in clubs and everything, and I was on the same club. It was called Tony Mart's in South New Jersey, Ocean City, New Jersey. And it's where Levon and Hawks played, and a guy named Elliot Randall. Elliot Randall later did Reeling in the Years with Steely Dan. He was a guitar player on those sessions. But Levon and the Hawks became the band for Bob Dylan. So Robbie Robertson, who was the guitar player in the band, and I were trading, we were pulling our Telecasters apart to find out what they looked like. And Robbie said, where'd you find your old Tele? I said, I got it from this guitar player by the name of Roy Buchanan, you know. And Roy Buchanan was like a very, very respected guitar player in South New Jersey. He was actually offered a job playing with the Rolling Stones at one time, and he never wanted to do that, go on the road like that or anything. So South New Jersey was really unique, you know. And then I would go to the shore, Atlantic City, Wildwood, New Jersey, Ocean City, Absecon. All these places had venues, man. There were so many bands playing. And the first band I ever saw was a band called the Fendermen. And they had a song called Mule Skinner Blues. And I was 14 years old watching these guys, you know, and that influenced me so much, you know, about what these guys were doing. They had all the blonde Fender amps leaning back with the tilt legs, you know. They all played blonde Jazz Masters, and they had a blonde P bass, and they had the Nehru jackets and the Beatle boots, and it was that first experience to me was pretty fantastic. But I would watch the setting. I could see their knobs on the amps, you know, were like it was set at like 11 o'clock, you know, and the tone was on 2 o'clock, you know. And so I would go home, write everything down. Boy, I would just remember everything. So when I would see somebody else later in life, I was like, oh yeah, this is how Jim Sundquist and the Fenderman, here's how he had his amp set, you know. And I thought that was pretty cool, you know, to be able to tell somebody what I saw, you know, firsthand. So over the years, I just started doing more and more repair work, and then I was on tour playing. I was on tour for 2.5 weeks with the Shirelles. They had a record called Soldier Boy out, and so we were playing in North Carolina, and then we ended up in Lima, Ohio. And I thought Lima was a pretty neat place. It had more train tracks than any other place I've ever been in America, you know. So I was playing in this club, and this guy comes up and he says, boy, what's that guitar you're playing? I said, that's my old Fender. You know, it was a 1956 Fender Telecaster. And he says, I got one of them there things at home, you know. And so he had a 53 Esquire, which didn't have the neck pickup. Esquire is like this. And this is a 53 Telecaster. And this was given to me by Roy Buchanan in 1972. And so for me, it didn't have this pickup here, this little chrome thing. And without it, it was called an Esquire. So I traded a guy for my little Fender. Do you remember the Fender volume pedals that would go sideways for a tone control? Do you remember those? And I paid $45 for it, and I got a 53 Esquire for $45. I thought that was so cool, you know. So that really sparked my guitar collecting over the years, you know. So I ended up on the road. I ended up in Cincinnati. I was giving guitar lessons to a young kid by the name of Charles. And I told him the band I was with, you know, the guys were on too many drugs and everything, and they were drinking too much. I said, I didn't want to be around that, you know. So I left the band, and he says, well, here, I can get you a job. I said, what do you mean you can get me a job? In what? In television. My dad's in television. And I said, well, what's he do? What's he do in television? I said, well, his name is Charles Scripps. So he owns Scripps Howard Broadcasting and Scripps Institute and all this great stuff, you know. So young Charlie Scripps got me a job working for WCPO TV in Cincinnati. And the first guy I started working with was a guy by the name of Nick Clooney, whose brother, or whose sister is Rosemary Clooney. And she's married to Jose Ferrer. And so I ended up doing a lot of stuff. And then this guitar player came through town again by the name of Roy Buchanan. He said, Seymour, you should be playing guitar. I said, oh, maybe. He says, I'm going to England. He says, why don't you take a vacation and join me over there? So in, I think it was March 1972, I left WCPO TV and went to London, England, and I got a job with Polydor Records. and I was doing harmony guitar parts with Roy Gallagher for the band Slade. If you remember that band, do you remember Slade? You guys do? They were the first guys that had the 8-inch high heel boots and everything, you know. And Waddy had that bowl haircut and everything. So anyway, I ended up working there until almost 76. And then I was recording with an artist by the name of Chris Harley, whose stage name was Chris Rainbow, and he was singing for Alan Parsons Project and the band Yes. He was doing all the harmony stuff. And we had 3 or 4 albums at the time that we had put out. And then my visa ran out. I would go to Calais, France, and come back to Dover, England on the hovercraft. And one day I happened to have a 20-pound note in my passport when I handed it to the passport agent. And he thought I was trying to bribe him, you know, which it just happened to be in there. And he says, oh, I see a pattern here. Because every 6 months I would go to Calais, France on a hovercraft, come back and get stamped for another 6 months on the passport. And while over there, I was working at the Fender Sound House, which for me was really a cool place to work. I was working with Ivor Arbiter, and the Arbiter fuzz face is what he did for Jimi Hendrix. And so being around him and watching his crew, I worked for a guy named Ron Roca, who was a pretty big engineer over there too at the time. He worked for Vox and all these different companies. So I was working, like gentleman said earlier, for The Who and then the Rolling Stones and Quiver, Green Slade, Robert Palmer, the band Free. I was at Free's last gig, and I always loved Paul Kossoff, his guitar playing with Paul Rogers, who was a fantastic singer. So I really started getting into working hands-on with each guitar player, you know, doing something very personal for them, fixing their broken guitar that hasn't been working in 10 years in the corner. And was working with Peter Green and Gary Moore and so many great people. And I went to a show with Jeff Beck, and we're watching The Who during one of their farewell concerts. They had like 10 of them, I think, you know, at the time, you know. So I'm up there, and this lady comes up to me. She says, "Are you a drummer?" I said, No. I'm just a guitar guy here. I'm with Jeff." And she said, "Well, if you know of a drummer, can you let me know, you know?" And she writes it down, and it was Linda and Paul McCartney. And she gives me her phone number, you know. And so I knew Denny Sewell, who played, he was hanging around with Roy Buchanan, and then he got the job with Wings. So it was really kind of neat, you know, with seeing him. So finally, when I had to come back to the U.S., I ended up in Topanga. And I was working there, doing the album with this guy, Chris Rainbow. We were working with Bob Margoloff and Malcolm Cecil. Do you know those guys? Tonto. And Tonto was one of the first synth that Stevie Wonder would use all the time. And he did Talking Book with it and everything. And so I was in the studio with those guys doing all this recording with this Chris Harley. And I was doing chipmunk guitars and all these overdubs and all these different sounds. I said, "God, how are you getting all those sounds?" They said, "Well, I made this little thing, or I made this thing, you know." And so I could have used you back then, you know, with all these effects I was trying to do. But I would take copper tubing and put a funnel on it, and then put my guitar into it, and then take the funnel and put it onto the back of the guitar, and I would get all these like harmonic overtones and stuff. And so for me, I always liked doing that, and then working with making stereo guitar pickups and making guitar circuits that would do a lot of really different things, you know. So when I ended up in Topanga, I met a lady, Kathy Carter, and who later became my wife, and she was good with taking these ideas I had and started doing the marketing for it and everything. And I thought this was great, because I am not a marketing person. I can talk the talk, and I can make the things, and I can come up with ideas. And I would always write my own letters to these guitar players who would always write to me saying, "I need to get this sound," or "How do I get this sound?" and then I would go back to all these notes that I had growing up, and every band that I would meet, I would write down information, you know, about how they were playing and what kind of amps they were using. And there was one early band called the Sterling Brothers, and a guy had '79 RVT the Gibson stereo amplifier that was designed by Seth Lover. And it was, he had a Gibson Les Paul, 1961 Les Paul, which they called the Mary Ford guitar, I guess. And I was always interested in that sound, the stereo sound. So I enjoyed making all different types of things and then trying to repair things. And I would always try to find the parts. So I was such a great source finder of all these guitar parts. So I would end up making stuff, and then to go fast ahead, we started making this one pickup called the JB, which I did for Jeff Beck, and he did it, used it on his Blow by Blow album, which was the first album he worked with George Martin from the Beatles, and he got his first Grammy for it and everything. So we're still making that pickup today after 35 years, and it's probably, I can't even begin to tell you how many, probably millions we've made, of that pickup. So going through the years, we ended up in Santa Barbara, and we have, Paul, how many employees we have? 125, 130? Yeah, and we make about 25 to 30,000 pickups a month. Yeah, so I mean we do a lot of OEM for all the major guitar companies, and it's enjoyable, and all the people that I've met over the years, and all the bands, like we did, work with Christopher Cross and Elton John's band for so many years, and working with guys, Michael Cimbello. I did Maniac, the pickups on that song, if you guys remember that. I worked with so many just great players. But the neat thing is people come to us and they want to see how we do things, and we show so many people how we manufacture. And I always remember, like when Les Paul told me something, or Leo Fender, I would go down and see him, or when Gibson would take me back to the factory, and I would actually have a chance to meet all the employees back there and watch what they do. And I met a group of folks. I'm in anthropology too, and I actually, I'll show you this. This is what I make. I do flint knapping, which is one of my hobbies, But the neat thing about it is you meet, in the music business, you meet so many great people and so many great guitar players throughout the world, and musicians, from everybody. And I was one of the first guys using your amps, that, don't you? Yeah, I still have them, yeah. And,
Hey, Seymour, can we wrap it up?
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up here.
Sorry.
Anyway, I want to thank these guys that talk too much, Anyway, two quick things. I've done a lot of work since Creedence with John Fogerty, Creedence Clearwater Revival. And he did an album called Centerfield. Has anybody ever heard of that one? Okay. He gave me his glove that he used in the actual video, which I thought it was pretty cool, And this is the last neck that Les Paul broke before he passed away, and Gibson sent it to me, and so I'm so honored by this, because he was such a great inspiration to me and everything, and I always loved the guy. I knew his daughter Colleen and everything. So, but I'm so honored to be here with everybody. I'm sorry I have to talk so quick, and I'm hoarse, but I'm glad our band had a chance to play for you a little bit too, and that you guys stuck it out here. I really appreciate it. And we're in Santa Barbara, and if anybody would like a factory tour, you're welcome to come out and see it. I mean, it's really a neat thing watching all these coils being wound, and I have such great employees that work out there, and they're so dedicated, and I get sidetracked because I want to do other things, but it's neat to be here in Santa Barbara.
So I had some questions. I've got a whole slew of them. And you know what? I'm just going to take questions from the floor because I think you guys probably have some great questions. Steve, you have a question?
Hi. So I wanted to touch on something you started out your talk with, which is content creation. And I want to divide it up into kind of two things. What I call like lower order content creation, which is filming the concert, putting it online, having it, moved around. And then higher order creation, which is the guy who wrote the song or gal who wrote the song, in that kind of active creation. And there's two kinds of sets of economics. That second kind of higher order creation is still people to people. the producer still wants $125 an hour. It's still $350 for the studio drummer for his session. But the economics of the other form of creation and moving content around are completely different. So can you talk about how those two interact with each other, and how does the kind that you're working with, aggregation, moving content around, in the long run continue to fund that higher order creation of actually having to pay lots of talented people to spend a lot of time birthing music?
When people put together content, say a songwriter or a studio musician, the songwriter is usually working under, I guess typically a lot of them work under a licensing model or are working off of a set gig. There's one of the guys who I do a lot of work with, he's from a boy band called One Republic, and he writes songs for everybody. And what's really interesting is he works sort of on a licensing model, and what part of you can do now is also get in on rev shares. There's technology has made an awareness of how things sell and what money they bring in, and then allowing for profit sharing to be much more accessible. And it works on both models, that you can have people that are true studio musicians who are paid by the hour and are in on that. If they're not involved in songwriting, or if they're not connected that way, they don't really see a take of the record. We're seeing a lot more people who are writing albums that are actually opening up writing to their band members instead of there definitely being a single artist. A Train is a really good example where all the different members of the band get writing credit, so they're able to see money in perpetuity of that album. But I think that the initial planning and creation of the content is very highly modeled, and there's very specific groups kind of working on that, be it the studio you're working with, the management group for the specific song, the studio releasing that song, and it's very highly ordered. And then when we talk about, say, something going on at a live level, we're definitely still looking at a service deal. But what's cool is groups like mine are able to actually do things on, fronting the business ourselves. We're not getting paid for service. We're getting paid, say, a higher payment out on the other end, because we can also come in and market the project. And so you're seeing a lot more groups that will not, I'm working with a guy, Billy Mann, who's a big publishing guy from EMI, who not just does songwriting, but also creates jingles, marketing, and websites all around the product, kind of building up all that collateral, which really gives them a bigger piece of the pie. So the opportunity, again, is really there for people at all levels to really tap in, as opposed to the previous model where people were getting paid fairly low rent, and then only the real stars and the big guys, the labels, were seeing the checks.
Thanks, Mike. We have a question from the back of the room.
This is a question for all of the equipment manufacturers and tinkerers. I'm curious whether the technology for wireless has really gotten to the point where it's indistinguishable from wired, or if that's something that can be surmounted, or if that's just, it'll always be a difference.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. It's maybe self-serving, but I can certainly say that to be true of ours, and we do blind A/B tests. We provide over 120 dB of dynamic range, flat from 10 hertz to 20 kilohertz, no companding or compression like typical analog wireless. And it's just the next frontier where there'll be a technology transition. There won't be analog wireless before too long, especially with how much of the spectrum the FCC is selling off. So yes, digital wireless is as good. Unfortunately, we don't have any here. But,
yeah, exactly. I'm going to add something on the consumer side, because Marcus's company is absolutely the experts on the performance side. We've been playing around with some different ideas on the consumer side, and that's one of the challenges is quality right now. I mean, Bluetooth, you guys have probably all used the headsets. Doesn't sound real good, and for us, when we're trying to do high fidelity sound, now there's AirPlay from Apple, and there's other things that we're playing around with and third-party companies, but it hasn't quite gotten there yet on the consumer side, partly because of the cost. We can use Apple AirPlay, and it's not bad, but for us to put Apple's chip and their technology and licensing into our product, we'd have to charge $400 for it, and we're at $99, so we can't really get there yet. But it's absolutely happened. We did a project with Marcus's team on the wireless side, and it absolutely blew people's mind that it's, you plug a wired in mic and you compare the wireless one, and people couldn't tell the difference. So.
Okay.
I just want to say, first, thank you to all four of you. It's not unlike a great rock band, all four very different, but made beautiful music together. So really interesting evening. And as a closet songwriter and budding guitar player, I'm really excited about Mikey. So I just wanted to ask you when and where we can get it.
Yeah, it's available probably June at this point. You know, it's a little delayed because we have to get approvals and all that stuff. But it's $99. It'll be available at Apple Store and Best Buy and kind of the normal spots, Amazon, that kind of thing. No, unfortunately. I didn't bring any prototypes for you, unfortunately. Sorry.
Are you going to do it at AES or NAMM?
Well, we introduced Mikey at the NAMM show, and then we're hoping to ship, like I said, in the next couple of months. We'll show it, over that. So.
Good.
Okay, in the back.
Yeah, this is for Marcus. It's really been really cool over the last 20 years to see technology take things that experts, had to do and put it in the hands of, just the rest of us. And I know you guys have new technologies coming out, new products out for live sound reinforcement, which I think is really fascinating. And I wanted to hear what, your vision is for where you see going, because it seems like you're kind of bringing that down to almost the normal person's level to be able to do sound mixing and that kind of stuff. So.
Well, thanks. I brought one here, so if you're curious to look at it later, I'm happy to show you the new StageScape mixer. But the basic philosophy, you can see the nice gentleman over here running sound for us over here. Every band has to deal with someone running sound, right? That often ends up being one of the musicians in a band, right? And that means that musician now has to be able to play music, but they also have to, again, use both sides of their brains and have an understanding of how to run sound at the same time that they're playing. So it's another area where there's been very little change for the last 50 years. There are digital mixers out there, but most of them are the same as analog mixers. They follow the same paradigm. Lots of knobs and channels, and if you don't know what you're doing, you get yourself in trouble real quick. So the idea here is we put all the power of a digital mixer, and for those advanced users, you can get to all the bells and whistles you'd want. But for the musician, it's a different paradigm with visual mixing, with common terms, and purposeful software that knows what you're plugging in. If you have a microphone on your kick drum, you want it to do something very different than the microphone the lead singer is singing through. And this system knows how to do that. I say it's a kick drum, and if I want the kick drum to have more boom or more snap, I literally can move on an XY pad with my finger towards the word snap or boom and just hear it and get the sound I want. And under the hood, it's controlling maybe dozens of parameters that a sound engineer would do to adjust EQ and compressors and so on. But it's to try to just create a new paradigm so that you can use normal language like you would talk to a sound engineer to get the results you want.
Okay, one more question in the back.
I want to thank you for making music so accessible to our youth generation. I'm fortunate to work with a lot of young artists here in Santa Barbara, including my daughter, who both of them live on Skype at night. But what's nice to see happening is we have a generation that is seeing that you don't have to be a pop star to get your music out there. And they're seeing that you don't have to have an agent, you don't have to get signed, and you don't have to have all these layers that, quite honestly, the music industry kind of got greedy about young talent. So I'm grateful that what you're creating is an opportunity for them to share their music and not have to be a pop star to make an influence with their sound. So thank you.
Also, in Santa Barbara here, we support Notes for Notes, which is, to me, a very important project. We had Steve Miller last year doing a show with us, and so we're going to do another one this year, so we're looking forward to it. But we try to put money back into the community for these young kids that can't afford music product, and so I'm very excited about that. And your support there too, has been very helpful. So, thank you.
Thanks. All right, so I'm going to close this with one last question, guys. At what point do you give up on the dream of being a rock star?
You all get when do you give up?
Seymour?
I still feel like I'm 13 years old, man. And you know what? When I was in the band, my generation, whoever had the loudest amp played lead guitar. So that's where I came from.
John?
I actually think the saddest day is when you stop having that dream. I mean, I'm a drummer, and I still think Peter Gabriel's going to call me, and I'm going to take a sabbatical, and I'm going to go on tour for 6 months with Peter Gabriel. I mean, it would be unbelievably awesome. And till the day I die, I'm going to have that dream, and I'm going to keep playing. And I just think you got to have it.
Marcus?
Yeah, I think, being a rock star is a state of mind. In the end, the joy of making music is when you're actually making it. And at that moment, whether you've got 2 people in the audience or you're jamming with your kids in the living room or you got a stadium, you're a rock star. The technology now lets anyone make the music and get that euphoric feeling. So, but I'm not getting those calls anymore.
I have a boxer and an English bulldog who think I'm a rock star.
There you go.
So I'm happy.
Mike, you have a dream?
From anyone I've talked to in the industry who's still having fun with it, it doesn't matter how old they are. And if we take a look at Coachella, we saw a bunch of bands, Madness and some other ones, all reuniting. Yeah. So I think it's sort of in perpetuity. We're seeing people live longer and longer every day. So I'd say as long as you're having a good time, keep at it.
Great. Well, I want to thank everybody. Thank our panel for tonight.
Thank you, guys.
This was really great, guys. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the audience hanging over. I want to thank our panelists for taking the time to be with us tonight. I want to thank the New Noise Music Festival. They helped us with some of the details of tonight's program. And a big shout out to Jeff Timer and New Noise. And come see us next month. Our next event will be right back here, May the 16th. It's the third Wednesday of the month. We will have Umesh Mishra from Transform. He's the CEO. Very hot company. Google put, 60 million, bazillion, trillion dollars into this company, and they're doing some really amazing stuff. And come out next month and hear Umesh speak. Thanks again, guys, for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next month.